I'm going to begin now, if that's okay.
She doesn't have audio, so I think that
So,
she said just to let
okay,
her know and that she'd be ready to start.
fine. So it's now 5:31. I'm calling the Board of Health meeting for Tuesday, November 17th, 2020 to order. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Westborough Board of Health will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Westborough's website at town.westborough.ma.us. For this meeting, members of the public wishing to watch the meeting may do so in the following manner: westboroughTV.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of Westborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay, first item on the agenda is the minutes from October 20th.
Unless you have any discussion, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for October 20th, 2020.
Okay, is Syed on?
He is not, no.
Okay, well, in that case, I will second. I have no comments or suggestions, so all in favor, we will do roll call vote. Dr. Walsh?
Walsh, yes.
And Dr. Ehrlich? Ehrlich, yes. Okay. The next item is the director's report for October 2020. I did not have any questions.
Let's see. Yeah, so I wanted to comment on the scrap, the compost buckets. I saw them out at the dump. It seemed like they were giving them out. I've actually personally been using it all week, and it's actually quite nice to use. So I encourage the public to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any feedback from the group yet as far as whether they gave them all out, had any left over, that sort of thing. Obviously, we'll discuss that at our next materials management meeting, which is, I think, later on in the month.
Well, you get now one piece of feedback.
Okay, thank you.
With that, I'd like to make a motion that we accept the director's report for October 2020.
I'll second that. Dr. Walsh?
Walsh, yes.
Dr. Ehrlich, yes. Okay, next item on the agenda is the sanitarians report. I wanted to start. I saw that you have 7 Blake Street, multiple roosters, the crowing being an annoyance for some people. I was particularly struck by that because where I am off of Ruggles, I certainly hear roosters. They're somewhat in the distance, but I didn't know if this is a more widespread problem in town. I don't mind the roosters that I hear. It makes me feel back to nature, but I imagine if I was closer to the rooster, I might feel differently. So I'm not trying to pass judgment with the other. I'm just more commenting and asking about what else you're hearing.
So roosters are becoming more prevalent because a lot more people are getting chickens for their homes. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we've had multiple, just going down to Tractor Supply, you can get chickens there twice a year. And they were saying they were selling to a lot of Westborough residents who had never owned chickens before. So the problem is when you buy chicks, you don't know if they're male or female. So you could get a rooster and not know it. We don't have a regulation that prohibits roosters. Most towns do. So because of the noise, so we are having that area. There's actually 4 houses that have 7 or 8 roosters between the 4 houses. And the woman said that she was hearing them all day long while she was at her pool all summer. She wasn't real happy about it. I passed it on to animal control and asked her to take a look at it because it doesn't fit our noise statute bylaw.
So if one set of chickens, so to speak, has more than one rooster, does that cause additional problems, or can more than one rooster get along okay?
Sometimes it depends on the rooster. I have friends who have chickens. My uncle had 120,000 chickens at a chicken farm, so I grew up with them. Roosters crow when they feel nervous or they think something's wrong. So in a neighborhood, if they're not on a farm, if a dog walks by the house, somebody walks from the front of the yard and they can see it, or they see a shadow, they crow because they're there to protect. So in a neighborhood like that, cars are going up and down the street, they're crowing all day. So sometimes roosters won't get along, and usually you have to cull one or send it off to another family. But yeah, I don't know. It's animal control is going to have to handle that right now until the abundance of calls get too bad that we may, that they'll have to make some kind of bylaw.
Okay.
The animal control officer is currently, I think, drafting not only chicken regulations, since we do not have any in town, and people are starting to have them more and more. And so I know that she has been doing that, and I assume that will come before town meeting at some point.
And I would imagine that this summer, with people being at home more, we're seeing an increase in nuisance complaints about noise. I mean, they were saying in the news about people's leaf blowers being particularly bad this year because everyone is trying to work from home, and you can just hear them all day long when normally you'd be at work.
Yeah, we had a couple of complaints about different construction areas that we didn't get before COVID because people were home. Again, that's tough sometimes because that's not unattended noise that's allowed during certain hours of the day. So it's not going to last forever, usually, but it's tough to deal with.
Okay. I had one other question for you, Ray. 182 Turnpike Road, COVID not being taken seriously, et cetera. What is 182 Turnpike Road? What's the business there?
It's right after the printer on the top of the hill. So if you're coming eastbound,
yeah,
there's a printer, and then there's a building that sits below it that sits back from the road. Two buildings before the CarMax.
Used to be there was a gymnastics facility there at one point in the past. I think it's moved out, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
Is it just warehouses there now, or
no? It's an office building.
Office building. Okay.
Yeah, it's an office building. So it's one down. It's two buildings before CarMax. It sits back. It probably holds 8 to 12 offices. They're not full. Erin went in a couple times. I went in a couple times. I think we're where we need to be on that. They were doing the fixes as I asked them to do it. So I think we're all set there. I haven't heard back from the complainant. So I think we're okay.
All right.
So there's a couple of, COVID-19 related mask things on here. And I'm just trying to get a sense as to how far we've progressed in enforcement. I think that we've given out some written warnings. I'm not sure if we've handed out multiple warnings to the same place. And then, what are our next steps? I do think that the general consensus here in Massachusetts is that masks are very important, and enforcing this should be getting easier and easier because I think more people are buying in. I think we still have some people that are staunch opponents, but we do have to protect the public health here.
So one thing I'm doing is on some of the newer ones, we got a couple in today. Steve handed me today. What I'm going to do is the brand new regulation came out last week with, everybody knows you're supposed to wear them all the time once you leave your house. So that's what I'm going to do is hand them a new regulation, say, this is the new regulation. This is where it's at. This is what you have to do. Now, one of the things under the regulation is if someone has a medical thing and they can't wear a mask, the owner or the manager can ask for that for the business. We can't ask for it yet, but the manager can. So I'm just going to let the managers know that, hey, if you're saying they can't work it, you should have it on file for yourself. So if somebody complains, you have that, because you never know. In 3 or 4 months, they may say, if they get enough complaints, they may say, okay, Board of Health can ask for that now too. Right. So I just want to prepare them. And so I have a stack of like 6 of the regulations, and I'm going to go out hopefully this week. Today we were stuck inside doing COVID calls all day. If I can get out tomorrow or the next day, I'll run out and drop these off at the place that we've had some of the ones that we've been habitually going to and everything like that, and trying to get those caught up.
Okay.
I make a motion that we accept the sanitarians report for October 2020.
I'll second that. Dr. Walsh?
Walsh, yes.
Dr. Ehrlich? Yes. Okay. So we got about 4 minutes. Why don't we get started on the health inspector's report? See how far we get with that. You want to start, Nathan? You want me to?
Paradise Briani Point.
Yeah, I'll just cross that off my list of things to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, so if you can remind me, they are currently on probation or not?
They are currently not on probation. They were on probation, then they got new ownership, so we started them fresh. They continue to have a problem with pest control. So I've been out there multiple times. We had a little bit of an issue with the pest control company because they needed to contact the fire department to turn off, their alarm system basically to completely fog it. And the pest control company wasn't willing to get a permit for that. So it was kind of a little bit of an annoyance, at least for me, but they ended up getting 3 treatments done in the past 2 weeks, and they are on my list to go back this week.
Okay. Tell them that if they don't get their act in gear, that they're going to be back before the Board of Health with potentially being brought up on probation. I know they're new managers, but it's a similar site from our point of view.
Right.
You want to go, and then I've got one after that.
Fine. Westborough Korean restaurant.
Yeah.
You want to? They haven't really been a problem, but this seems kind of bad.
This is a typical. They're always about the same. They have quite a few violations. It's kind of the same things over and over. At the time I went in, I was uncomfortable enough with their the buildup of grease on their hood and their Ansel system that I actually did call in the fire prevention team. So they came in and they shut them down until they got the hood inspected and cleaned. So
Okay.
I have them back in the meantime, and they did correct all their violations on our end.
Great.
And then the bistro seems like the description there is problematic. Unsafe sounds probably better way to describe that.
So the bistro, you had spoken to them. We had discussed going back for an inspection before the end of the year. So we actually ended up getting a complaint. So I decided to go in there and deal with the complaint, but also do an inspection while I was there. They had quite a few violations that I found. Again, their hood was dirty enough that the fire department went in and closed them down for 24 hours until they got that inspected. I have gone back in the meantime, and they have corrected everything that they needed to. I went back twice, actually. One it wasn't an actual reinspection, but I was driving by and I said, I'm going to pop by just to ease my mind. And they continued to have the same violations. So I think they are working on it. I'm going to continue to keep an eye on them though.
All right. I only had one more, so maybe we can just take that before we get to the school report. Cold Harbor. What's going on with them? It just seems like they're difficult to work with.
They continue to have unpermitted food trucks scheduled there, and we end up hearing about it, finding out about it. They're not hiding it. They post it on their website, their Facebook page, and they've been contacted, and they know that they're supposed to make sure all their food trucks are permitted throughout the year, and they continue to not do that. So
do we have any recourse?
I'm
Complaining
with the food trucks. I don't know what other, Steve.
Yeah, well, these are just food trucks that, we generally, for a food truck to come in, we want to inspect them, make sure they are properly equipped to, work in town. So if they're just showing up, it's like cat and mouse game to a point. The owner knows, he knows that every food truck is supposed to be, inspected or permitted by us before they show up there. So,
can we find the food truck? Could we give a letter to Cold Harbor and say, look, we're going to find any food truck that doesn't get permitted, and then find them and then show them the letter that we sent to Cold Harbor months ago saying, hey, look, if you have an unpermitted food truck, we're going to find them. That might be incentive enough to get them to at least come. I mean, we don't want to stop the food trucks. We just want them permitted.
Correct. I don't know about finding. We don't have a structure or a mechanism for that. As far as, I guess we could adopt a non-criminal disposition for that, but we don't have such a thing right now.
All right.
Maybe we can put that on the agenda for next meeting to
Just discuss the principle.
whether we want to adopt something like that.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Did you have any other questions for Aaron?
Nope. I make a motion that we accept the health inspector's report for October 2020.
I'll second that. Dr. Walsh?
Walsh, yes.
Dr. Ehrlich? Ehrlich, yes. Okay. It being now 5:46, we come to the next item on the agenda, which is a follow-up on how the schools have been doing. And I thank Amber for being able to join us. So I'll let you start. I don't think you need any introduction or anything else. I think you can just give us an update how have things been going in the era of COVID-19.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to join you, and I'll be succinct. I know you guys always have a busy agenda, but I think it's important given the range of impact we have with 4,000 students and over 700 faculty to make sure that you continue to feel that we're doing what we can to provide safe operations and a strong educational framework to the community. So I want to begin by thanking Steve, thanking your committee as well as our nursing staff for the continuing partnership of really strong work. We also did a flu clinic lately. I'm sure Steve kept you updated on that. Like, I feel like there's just a really collaborative and strong partnership to be shared with you and with the Board of Health. So thank you. I thought I would break it into a couple of parts and then work off of your questions. One, I'm going to give you 3 quick program updates on just changes that are either modifications or next stages of work. 2, I'll give you a quick kind of high view of our data and how we're doing. I know Steve always has that, but just a little bit on that. And then I think 3, I sent the pressure test data that we had talked about. Dr. Walsh thinking would be good for him to have a chance to see. And I'd be happy to talk briefly about kind of those numbers. And I think, again, like just looking at that data is kind of self-informing. But I think more the essence of kind of where we are in our models and the types of ways we're modifying, making changes. So first to program updates. I sent you a memo just indicating that we continue to work forward on sports, the opportunities and the guidelines that we would leverage in Westborough. I sent you a brief memo that Johanna DiCarlo, athletic director, sent the Westborough High School kind of community, keeping our athletes and families updated. I want to say that we completed fall sports very successfully with no case outbreaks and a capacity for our youth to play sports and to feel the joy and positive benefits of that. And I want to thank you for working with us collaboratively on that and commend the coaches for their commitment to really working hard to meet the criteria of health guidelines. Right now, the key point to mention around winter sports is that the approving groups kind of continue to kick the can down the road a little bit on decision making with regard to the parameters for the winter sports season. We won't have any tryouts or practice until December 14th, which is later than the initial window that you gave some approval to for us to allow students to come in and do some structured practices during that 2-week remote model. Right now, we'll be in a holding pattern on that, but we'll move forward with the plans that you previously approved when we're able to. I would imagine, and then the little update that they have is just to keep you in the loop that the MIAA and all these various groups are, moving towards decisions. And as soon as I know anything more, I'll send a memo to Steve and keep you in the loop. If they come up with some design of winter sports that looks particularly different than some of the parameters that Johanna talked with you about, we'll come back and meet with you again. Any questions on winter sports?
I'm going to hold in those questions until later, I think.
Okay, that's fine. Next, number 2, an update on the changes by DESC and working with us and some time to do some thoughtful preparation to allow us to do band instrumental work indoors. And I provided you a memo from Chris Martin, Director of Fine Arts. I'm actually presenting this same memo to the school committee tomorrow and discussing it with them. The parameters are actually, I think, very sound. They will allow us to come indoors at 10 feet minimum distances in well-ventilated auditorium and large practice areas. They need to have specialized masks and equipment. So the masks are specially designed with flap-based covers where the actual mouthpieces go through and have a flap that cover the area. And then they have bell covers that have guards to gather any, almost like a mask for the, basically a mask for the instrument. And then drop pads for collecting any spit when they have to clean out their machine, their instrument. I think that the structure is such that we believe we could basically provide, we'll leave all the other lessons virtual, which is they are now up through middle school, through Mill Pond. And then with Gibbons and high school, we will utilize this structure, if you're thinking the pieces look fine, to basically move forward with indoor sessions through the winter.
Yeah, so I thought the DESE guidance that Chris Martin is following sound very sound to me. I did have a couple of questions about, are you going to just be doing kind of practices and rehearsals, or are you actually going to be performing in front of people? Because there's some extra measures about like 25-foot distance to the audience and things like that. So I didn't know, what you were envisioning in terms of the band.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, right now we've kind of tentatively canceled all concerts. I don't know, given where we are in the pacing of the state and the current status of things, that we're talking about doing any types of performances. Okay. We would certainly cycle back to you and have that as a context of conversation. But those would need to be very small, kind of intimate, well-spaced audience gatherings of, they'd have to be well under 25 probably. So, but certainly I wouldn't say that we wouldn't entertain those, but I would come here and work on the parameters with you.
Okay. And I just assume that there's no sharing of equipment. I don't quite know exactly how band works, but everyone has kind of their own designated equipment.
And they pack and clean and manage their own equipment, clear their gear, pick up those spit pads, throw them away, dispose of them. So, I think within the cleaning protocols, we should be in good shape. The third notation I wanted to make was something that I think has been kind of, not something I have a lot of key data on, but just want to note to you that I could certainly keep you updated on this when I do other updates. But TeamWorks is running an academic academy, which is the community education group. And they did summer school working with you. Brian Bacon came and worked on the structure of being able to provide some summer programming and did so effectively, collaborating on the parameters that needed to be met. And I just wanted to report his continuing to do such at the academic academy of the TeamWorks, where we rented that space for the year such that we could do distance supported day care as needed for students kindergarten to grade 6 when students are in their away day, if parents or faculty needed coverage. So I feel like that program is also going very well. We manage it with all the same safety parameters that they do with the after school program, and just wanted to note that they continue to be very successfully moving forward. So those are the program updates. I'm happy to take questions or steam through, and then we can open it up to general conversations. What's your preference?
Yeah, why don't we just start in with the questions? Nathan,
Sure.
Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask a couple of general questions about just how things are going in terms of, gatherings outside of school with school-aged children, and if you had any suggestions on how the Board of Health might be able to help kind of control or reduce or increase safety at those events. Obviously, that's what other schools seem to be suffering from when they have problems. It's these kind of gatherings that aren't necessarily in the school building, but, you know, kids on their own getting together.
So I think that, you know, we are taking an active kind of participatory role in sending communications home to families, continuing to encourage them to follow those guidelines and to pay attention. I think the high school and Brian just put out a communication last week, you know, encouraging families to be, you know, paying attention. I think that the balance of what's allowable for us to direct people's independent time is really managed by positive messaging and expectations. I think families know that, you know, so I think in general, the majority of our families are working very hard to participate with us in keeping parameters as guidelines to the community have been provided. I don't know what more we can do. I think we use public service announcements and things. I mean, I think the messaging around the governor's messaging around keeping Thanksgiving groupings small, you know, I know that I've been talking with people who have all kind of like small down gatherings or deciding just to stay home. I think that, you know, people are readjusting a little bit, controlling the behavior of high schoolers should they decide to gather. I know that we'll find like informal basketball as an example, like kids will get together and play. We do what we can, and I think families do as well, but we're somewhat limited on it. We do follow up and have individual conversations, and certainly if there's anything where there's a gathering that's large, we utilize the school safety officer to make a home visit.
Yeah, one of the other questions I had revolves around kind of the seating assignments. I know that the goal at the beginning of the year was to kind of have assigned seating for students, and that I think you were going to draft or you already had a document kind of showing what rooms can hold how many students in kind of preparation for full in person. But I was wondering how the assigned seating is going.
So the assigned seating in classrooms is pretty concrete in terms of how they manage it. If they let students sit where they want, they take a photo usually at the class at the end, so they have a record. So if we had to do contact tracing, they have the day capped, and that would be high school. If you look at like middle school and on down, like there's a whole array of seat assignments and structures that we're using so that when we need to do contact tracing, every teacher keeps their roster at home. So they're able, if we have to call them on a weekend, to answer questions around who was near a student. So I feel confident that the seating chart mechanism is strong.
Thank you. Alan, do you have questions you want to ask?
Yeah. So based on the experiences you've had in the first, 2+ months of the year, do you have some notion as to whether you could see for this academic year, at any point going to a fully in-person situation or having to go fully remote? Or do you anticipate we're going to stay hybrid as the default for all of this academic year?
So, I mean, I think, again, like I'm not being evasive. I'm just being clear that all of it's fluid and guided by school committee. I think the pressure testing data that I sent you shows that we would face real complications, really almost inability to meet the 3-foot distance to bring back people full time to full in-person schooling. I think that would be an involved conversation that would be potentially a spring conversation based upon where we are with vaccines and illness rates. And that would be an involved conversation with you as a department, as well as with the school committee. The balance, as a leadership response is to not create disharmony and disorganization at different stages in the year. And if we reach stability and students are making progress and demonstrating stability, that's probably more important than pushing back into a different model. We are looking currently, though, at flexing a strand of cohort C kids. Like currently we do have a small number of students across district that come 4 days a week because of learning requirements. And we're currently looking at the next tier of students who are struggling within the hybrid away, if they need some other types of supports, to see whether or not against that pressure test or against the design of instructional models, if we can bring back another portion of students. So we're looking at a variety of flex responses that we see activating in January that will look at different ways to support students in a range of models. It might be away day students who come into work in a supported kind of study, which we could do distanced as an example, with some tutor support. So we're looking at an array of things based upon performance academically and social emotional health. So I see that more as the response, where I think through the middle of this year and into the spring, we would be responding by flexing the types of ways we're working with students more than, and maybe increasing the number of students that are thus available to be in the building, but not looking at classroom full-on return, and a shutdown of that model. So that's where we are right now.
So I mean, I encourage you to try to push even further in terms of, especially even if it's not to go back, if it's to at least plan for what it would look like. And so, Alan, I would actually like to make a recommendation from Board of Health that the school department, or Amber in particular, try to come up with a plan for what in-person schooling would actually look like and how it would be implemented in the Westborough schools. And maybe we can even try to set a date. And it would be nice to have them have that so that we can evaluate it. And I mean, it's clear that, DESE from the beginning has basically said that school districts should have 3 plans, a fully remote, a hybrid, and a full in-person. And that was supposed to be due back in, I think, August or something.
Right.
I've not yet seen the full plan for in-person yet. And so for me, in order to kind of comply with what the government is asking the Board of Health to look at, is I would like to be able to see that plan. And I know it's not just you, Amber, that's drafting it. It's, partly the school committee as well. And so if you can bring that back to the school committee, and Alan, if you wanted to have this be a motion, we could do that. If you just want it to be an individual board member, that's fine too.
Yeah, so let me start by saying, Nathan, that I agree with you in principle. The only issue I have at the moment really is one of what I'd call timing, which is at the moment, as I think everybody knows, we are experiencing a bit of a surge in cases in the Commonwealth. And so, whatever's going to happen is not going to happen right away. I do think the point, I guess, Amber, that I would support from Nathan is this, that if there is a possibility, whether it be because there's vaccine or other elements that allow for a return to fully in person at some time in the spring, you want to have some lead-in preparation, so it's not, you have to start from square one, when it appears that this would become feasible, in the near future. So, that's the balancing. And again, right now, obviously, anytime you spend, doing preparations like that, is time taken away from other things. So, we understand that. And so, I guess, Nathan, my sense
So
is,
it would not be to implement; it would be a
no,
plan.
I get it, but even so, there's, we sort of have a, surge at the moment. And so in terms of making a formal recommendation, I probably would defer that probably till our next meeting and then reassess how our case count's going and, what's going on. Just right now, if you look at the graph, we are clearly on the left-hand side of the curve going up. And so I'm just a little reluctant to push for what you're saying right at this exact moment.
And so, Alan, with the
We'll come to you in a second, Syed. Go finish your thought, Nathan, please. Nathan, please finish.
I was going to say that with the case counts going up, it's not necessarily going up because of school transmission, right? It's just kind of going up as the general population tries to travel more and open up a little bit, especially in those other age groups. And so because of that, I do want to figure out whether the Board of Health thinks it, I want to give guidance to the school on things like post Thanksgiving having 2 weeks fully remote, or post Christmas having 2 weeks fully remote, or whether we think it's safe for them to operate in a hybrid mode. These are things that I think that they would benefit by a recommendation from the Board of Health, and for us to stay silent on this, I think does a disservice.
Okay, I'm going to let Sad go in 1 second. I just want to say case counts are going up for a variety of reasons, some of which you have alluded to, and some of which are because of aggressive contact tracing and the fact that so many people who have no symptoms or very few symptoms are being tested because they've traveled, even though they've, they're not altogether sick or things like that. Syed, I know that you're split between things. Did you have something to say?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to stay with you guys. It's a couple of things. One, I'm with you, Dr. Ehrlich. I'm deeply troubled and concerned about the rising rates of transmission, of cases, not just here in Massachusetts, but also countrywide. There's continues to be increased transmission. So I think at this point we need to be exceedingly careful. And then with regards to the transmission, I haven't had a chance to. I quickly glanced at it, but I haven't gone through great details. But there were two papers that were released online first at the New England Journal. One was looking at transmission in the Marine Corps recruits, young healthy people, right? And there was significant asymptomatic transmission. And then there was the study that was done on the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Again, young, healthy naval service people, and again, a lot of healthy people transmitting and not potentially getting sick. So I think we still need to be careful of what I'm not sure. And then the other last comment that I would make is you seem to think that there may be a vaccine available by spring. I'm not so sure of. Again, your expertise is far more than mine. There's still, how effective that vaccine will be, the efficacy, safety, and whether people will take that. I think there's still a lot of things in play. I think it gives us, and the school, with all due respect, the schools have plenty on their plate. I don't think it's on us to add more to them. I think there's still time to sort all of this out. And I think we can look at this, whether we want to look at it next month or we can look at it in January. But I think asking them to do this right now is putting a burden on them that is not, I don't think it's fair. And I think it also will confuse the residents. I think the message, at least the message that I would say that the board would be, wants to get out there, and I'm just speaking for myself, is that there is still transmission going on, that we are, that it is still, the virus is still there, and you still need to take precautions.
Yep.
Go ahead, Nathan.
Entirely. I think that, the virus is still there. We still need to take precautions. I do think that we need to make sure that we are planning for the future, though, and to not plan for the future means that then when we want to react, we have to start developing a plan as opposed to already having it in place. I do think that right now we have some, safety in the schools. The schools have been doing a great job so far. And while I don't want to push them to the breaking point where they become a problem, I do think that, we could do a little bit more than we're doing right now, and still have it be safe. And I think it's important that we give guidance to them. If you guys don't feel that, if you guys think strongly that they should be in remote for the 2 weeks after Thanksgiving and the 2 weeks after Christmas, and you guys want to give that as a recommendation to the school department, you guys can do that. I think most schools are not doing that. I don't think that we need to. I would rather have the Board of Health come out and say that we don't think you should travel for Thanksgiving. I think that's a much safer route to go than saying that we should, have the schools remote for 2 weeks.
So I think, Nathan, there's two separate issues here. One is guidance about potentially opening up if and when a vaccine is available and things like that. Okay, but now you're raising a separate issue, which is should the schools be completely remote for 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, after Christmas?
Separately then.
So,
right.
Right. I do just comment on one piece, and again, I'm
Go ahead.
here at your pleasure to continue to discuss any of this as needed, and I respect the conversation and the opportunity to look at different views. I don't disagree with you, Dr. Walsh, that needing to plan forward on any model changes is an essential part of running a district successfully. And so, of course, like, we will look at trajectory of planning if there's any opportunity where we think that we could shift in that discussion based upon the trends in numbers and our performance and, you know, what we see going on. As I said, we're already looking at, through January and February, more flex in the ways that we're bringing back different groupings of students. But we will face challenges that branch out into different directions than things that the Board of Health has to deal with. But in participating with us, I want to be transparent that, you know, right now we're going to bump into the December 31st closure of all federal funding. And we'll have exposure for several $100,000 of additional salary in this fiscal year. And that's a piece we have to cope with. And we're waiting to see how to do that. We are working on that. But I think we've accessed a lot of good funding options to provide what we've provided thus far. So there's a funding issue that has to be part of planning, and I agree with you. Like, I certainly don't want to give you the sense that we haven't looked at those models, and we certainly feel like they're worthy to bring forward. But I also don't want to create confusion in the community or with my faculty that that we're changing directions when they barely feel like they've got their feet under them. So my messaging is a really important part of stability. So I'm very cautious that I don't say things that I think could lead to people saying, did you hear the superintendent said they're bringing everybody back? Because that will create an anxiety and a mayhem that I'm not willing to have my name attached to. So I'm just really cautious. No, I know you're not. I just want to respect that. I don't want you to feel like I'm not open to it. I am very open to the discussion. And I think that we are already at a leadership and faculty level talking about students based on their performance and their emotional needs, which is our job, performance and emotional needs, to look at what we can do to flex some of that work in bringing students back in some additional strands. I'm certainly very happy to look towards, laying out that model. It has financial implications as well, because DESE will not remove the guideline that families will continue to be able to remain in remote, which we have to fully provide. And there's a good chunk of staff, paid staff, which are now doing that. So if we bring back students, we can't force them to exit remote. They're allowed to do what they want. And we could, many of our hybrid families might.
I mean, presumably there would be less classes if lots of kids are staying remote. I mean, that's just,
the same numbers, right? But you can't collapse your hybrid model without looking at the space pressure data. And so I think you can look at the spreadsheet that I forwarded that gives you some sense of the range.
When did you send that, Amber? Because
no, it came from Steve. It came from Steve.
I just sent it to Steve today to say I was going to mention it, to say that, you had requested to see the pressure test data. So I'm forwarding it to you as a start of a conversation to let you see what the range of those challenges look like. And I'm happy to then, again, there's timelines for this stuff. As we look at what spaces we can access even to bring back students that don't flow into classroom settings. And the way it works is we are staging forward slowly. So I want to be reassuring to you that our objective goal is to have all children back in school successfully. But the quarantining cycle also provides instructional challenges we can't ignore. So every time we quarantine, a circle of students, you've got kids out, some are up to 24 days, which is a month out of the school cycle. That's really tough to support when teachers are providing in-class instruction. And so there's a lot of academic challenges to it that we're not looking to leave more kids getting quarantined because we pressure test and bring too many people into the cycle of who would have to quarantine, because the circle of who's sitting near kids increases, because it does have parameters when you look at the cohort tracing that could create other problems. So we'd have to look at that. So that's all stuff that we would certainly be happy to, and I am happy to come back as we look at this heading into January. I can give you numbers updates on, the range of students we've brought back as we look at that. But the data on pressure testing has some real challenging schools for us. High School, Gibbons, and Armstrong and Fales, as well as 50% of Hastings, provide some challenges. So again, very happy to start that conversation, and understand it to be, again, the voting body of the school committee who guides the final decision-making on any of that in terms of directive to me. And again, they take my recommendations within reason. So we'll definitely work forward on it.
Okay, I want to just try and cover the one other topic that has been raised, and I think is worth, and here I think the board has much more opportunity to weigh in because it's more timely, and that has to do with does it make sense from a health perspective to have 2 weeks fully remote following the Thanksgiving holiday, given not just what's happening in Massachusetts and around, but in many of our neighboring states where there's sort of a tight lid on everybody with respect to their Thanksgiving celebrations. I actually think there's less risk now than we might have thought a month or two ago when we had previously discussed this. Regarding the study in the New England Journal that Syed had mentioned, I will say they basically looked at 2 cohorts of Marine recruits, and one were confined to barracks, and they all had frequent testing during this time period for 2 weeks after initially coming to where they were being trained, and the other had the testing, but they were just advised to do typical social distancing and nothing more than that. And the rates of transmission were actually higher in the groups that were confined to barracks. And what this article did show was a couple of things. One, when you keep people all together, then transmission rates will go up amongst that cluster. And then the second thing is, of course, as he mentioned, these young, healthy people, I think out of a significant number, a very small percentage were actually symptomatic. And so we don't know, how concerning is it when people get asymptomatic COVID? Is there going to be complications down the road? Nobody knows. But the vast majority of these exposures don't result in serious disease in certain populations. And the concern we have, of course, is that, families consist of multi-generational members, and the older people are at greater risk, and we've seen that certainly in the springtime. So, again, it may be prudent to expect that more people might choose to be remote during that time period, but it isn't clear to me that there is really a material increased risk compared to other times, like 2 weeks. The subsequent 2 weeks after you were planning to be fully remote, it may be just as risky from a health perspective, or just as safe, depending upon your perspective.
What about you, Syed? Do you have any thoughts on that issue? He must be.
Syed, are you on the call? You're muted.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm just saying I'm the pessimist on the board. I'm just I'm just I remain deeply concerned. Thank you.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think we are all deeply concerned. We're all trying to balance the multiple perspectives that we have going on in terms of, we could have, recommend that everyone just never leave their house, but, that's not what we're recommending. I think that we're trying to find that balance between what is, still safe and, but we're not going for zero risk, right? We're going for reasonable risk so that we can protect people, but that we can actually still get stuff done. And education is one of those things, just like grocery shopping and getting food, that we deem as, really an essential service that needs to be provided. And so we want to make sure that we can have those happen.
Right.
So Amber, is this something that's been discussed to revisit that, or have you just been sort of continuing with the current plan? What's been happening?
So there's layers to this. Again, I think, first of all, I respect the range of conversation, and I appreciate the diverse views you bring to this. And I certainly agree with Dr. Walsh that, education is an extremely high priority, and getting it right in terms of how we bring students in and maximizing those potentials remains certainly a shared mission. I need to be clear that it is a settled contract agreement that got us open that we would have those weeks as remote.
Okay.
So it's a contract agreement. It's an MOU, it's a settled contract that got the agreement at the table that we were committed to finding ways for our teachers to feel that they could see family and then have time to quarantine, that they could pick up college students who are coming home, that families who we can't control, and it circles back to our original first question you asked me, how do we limit it? I can't tell people they can't travel or see family. I mean, so I don't know. It becomes this invisible question mark that circles at a very intense high level amongst our faculty. And so the creativity of that decision, while I understand the question about whether or not it was necessary, settled aspects of the agreement that gave our faculty the sense that we're willing to come back.
Let me try to rephrase it a little bit in that if the Board of Health were to come out and say that we think it was safe to have school, hybrid or in person or one of these things that you couldn't do because there's already a settled contract in place, that doesn't mean that you have to renegotiate the contract to do that. All it's doing is letting you know that the Board of Health thinks that it was safe to operate in that mode. Maybe it'll change future negotiations when you decide to, have stuff settled in contract before any of the health data is in, and that maybe you want to wait till a little bit, closer to the deadline so that you can kind of figure out whether you need to do more or less than what you're doing now.
I respect
that this changes anything that you do. I'm saying that this lets you know where the Board of Health is, so that then when you go to make other decisions, you can kind of, layer that on.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, again, I want to be clear that the design of our model and approach to all of this and the confidence that you built in the school community that we could return to school allowed us to get families in and faculty to feel that we create a safety plan that works. So the model as we designed it and as it was negotiated and settled, put a lot of structures in place, but it created the trust necessary that our faculty return to work and the community thinks we're doing a good job. So I do recognize that your voice matters, and I respect any vote you forward as guidance that we'll try to be responsive to.
I would just second what Nathan said, which is, again, we understand, we don't pay attention to what's contract issues and what isn't. That's not our purview. That's not our responsibility. We just are trying to give guidance, and the guidance has to be weighed against a multitude of other things that you have to take into account, that you have other people you report to. So to that extent, then, Nathan, do you wish to make any motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Health provide some guidance to the school department that we think that would be reasonable to have hybrid school during the 2 weeks following Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I think that if we leave it at that that's all it is just, what the Board of Health stance is. Yeah,
I appreciate that, and I respect that. I mean, again, I want to be clear as you make those motions that our safety plan, has you guys embedded heavily in it, in the sense that we were clear that your guidance would be part of our work. And so the complexity of the contract part is different. And again, sets limits for me and, again, for the school committee as well. But your guidance is what shapes the way we're running things. So I appreciate those pieces.
Yeah. And so I'm going to second this and also say that, we, as has happened in other discussions that we've had, where, we talk about, what might be something that we consider safe, and then for various reasons, you may choose to do something more conservative. And this has come up in issues related to the testing, the SAT testing or things like that, where we've had these conversations. So, so to that extent, I agree that this is just guidance. It's just our perspective, and it's our perspective now, based on what we know now, which is different than what we knew 3 months ago.
Right.
So, and again, I think to the extent that it may inform discussions in the future about where points might, flexibility or how ideas should be revisited, then it may be of some value.
No, I agree.
Sayed, do you have any further comments on this?
My only comment would be that I think that the schools I would defer. I recognize that we have an obligation, but I think the schools have plenty. I would defer this to the schools. They have contract things that as Ms. Bach has pointed out. So that is why I'm just reluctant to get.
So Syed, though, this is not a question about what the schools should do in terms of changing contracts. This is about what the Board of Health feels is safe. And
Right.
to defer to the school department on what the Board of Health thinks is safe is not our job, right? I mean, our job is to tell them what we think is safe.
And if you disagree, that's fine too. I mean, you've said you're more conservative, but it's really at that question, and perhaps if you want to articulate, your concern, that's what this is for. And if not, we'll just move to a vote.
Go ahead and so could you reiterate? Just go over your motion one more time, Dr. Walsh. You're just saying that.
You want Paula to read it back?
That would be great. Yeah. I won't remember how I phrased it the first time.
Paula, you're on. You're on mute.
Oh.
There you go.
I don't know that I got it all. My computer was running out of battery and I got up to put it in.
All right, so Nathan, you're back on again.
I guess the motion would be that the Board of Health wants to give guidance to the school department about the weeks following Thanksgiving and Christmas, and that the Board of Health feels that it would be reasonable to have hybrid or in-person learning during those weeks.
And I would just amend that slightly, Paula,
Sure.
to just say the Board of Health recommend or suggests, rather say we want to give guidance, we're actually giving the guidance.
Okay.
The motion is that the Board of Health suggests that the following. And suggests is a softer term than recommends, which sounds like it's like, please do this, That's at least that's the language we use in medical clinical practice guidelines. Recommend is strong, suggests is more nuanced.
So I accept the more nuanced suggests.
Okay, Syed, go ahead.
But my question is, it's the 17th today. What happens if the case counts go up? I mean, or next week or the week after? Where does that leave us, and where does that leave the school?
So I know you're going to make a motion, but I just want, out of deep respect for the support that Dr. Hashmi is providing, I acknowledge and just want to say I'm comfortable with the motion in the sense that it adjusts to the fact that we learned a lot from when we designed the initial MOU, which is a settled contract now. We will not amend, but it recognizes that it certainly is supportive to me in the schools if you indicate that we could have been in session in hybrid health-wise. And I'm comfortable with that. So, Dr. Hashmi, I just want you to know that I don't feel that guidance, and I believe your vote is always.
All right, that makes me feel better. Okay, all right, then that's fine. Okay.
And quite honestly, the other piece of this is, if for whatever reason, okay, and this is not an area I have any expertise in, or Dr. Walsh, but if the teachers came to you and said, we really wish we could do X, Y, or Z. Okay, sometimes contracts get renegotiated or things get amended or whatever, and we're just giving you what we perceive to be that piece. And to Syed, to your point about what if case counts go up, again, that can be dealt with when that happens. But I'm also telling you that if you look at Massachusetts for the last 5 months, you can barely detect any uptick in the deaths associated with COVID-19. It's pretty flat, the number per day, even as the case counts have been skyrocketing for a while. And so, so a lot of this is we are picking up milder disease. And how does the existence of identifying more mild disease affect the risks that are associated with children in school? That's really a complex question. We're not going to answer it tonight, but it's not as simple as just saying case counts going up, therefore we need to hunker down.
And the other thing I would like to add is that the board back in July probably would not have been comfortable making this motion. This is very recently that now, after looking at months of data, do we feel comfortable, do I feel comfortable making this motion? And so it's not something that, we would have anticipated to have happened. And so what we're letting you know is, just that this is, latest data in, kind of how we feel. We'll know more after Thanksgiving if we really feel the same way, with the other schools that have chosen different options, whether they have big problems, whether we still feel the same way about December. But as of right now, I think it kind of captures, the thoughts of the board.
All right, so I think we can bring this to a close. I'm going to take a vote on Dr. Walsh's motion. Dr. Walsh?
Walsh, yes.
Dr. Hashmi?
Yes.
And Dr. Ehrlich, yes. Are there any further questions for Amber? If not, I thank you for your time. I thank you for joining us, and we are always happy to help, and we appreciate the information you bring to us about what's happening in the schools.
Well, ditto. I find your advice to be really grounding. I want to commend Steve again and his team for their help. And we continue to look forward to the partnership as we navigate this year. So thank you so much. I imagine we'll see each other again. And advice, guidance, and I think the robust conversation is something I really value. So please know you can follow up with me individually and as needed. And I look forward to our continued work.
And I do just want to make one final comment, if I can, Alan. And that
yes,
is that I wanted to thank Amber, all the people in the school department, the teachers in particular. I mean, we know that this disease is going around, that there are risks. We do appreciate the work that every single person is doing, and we don't take any of our decisions lightly. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone involved.
That's appreciated as well. Thank you.
Okay. The next item on our agenda which we are behind on, but it's a discussion of the Board of Health goals. Steve, why don't we have you start by just sort of setting the stage, and then we'll have some dialogue.
Sure. So I in the packet was I submitted the short-term and long-term goals from last year, and I figured that was a good kind of.
I got cut off. Goodbye. Sorry. I just want to say good night to you. It was a very abrupt leave. Very non-Zoom appropriate. So good night, all of you. And I'll talk to you later.
Good night.
Bye.
So these were this goal setting is part of the budget process that the town had started last year. They published these along with the budget when they presented. So I did give you a list of what our short-term and long-term goals of last year were. Obviously, a lot of this got blown out of the water with COVID. And I think that COVID obviously is going to have an effect on where we go from here. We just spend a tremendous amount of time every day, Ray, Erin, and I, doing not only follow-up for cases, contact tracing, but also complaints never stop. So I thought it would be a good idea if we just kind of went down the list, and some of them we actually did achieve. Some of them I think probably need to be removed for the near future because it's just not going to happen. And I don't know if that's probably the best way to approach this or not. Is that how you want to go? Yep. Okay. All right. So under short-term goals, one of the first one was conduct retail and tobacco compliance checks for sales to minor. This would include training the staff on how to do compliance checks, and we would also need a funding mechanism for that. So one thing I'd like to say about this goal is since we had made that goal, we have joined the Leominster Tobacco Control Project. I don't know if you remember last year, the Worcester Regional Tobacco Control Project disbanded. And at the time we were setting these goals, we were not part of a tobacco control project. So since then, we are part of Leominster. We have not internally done any compliance checks or even, started doing that. A lot of this also hinged on, if you remember back in September, October, the Governor Baker got involved in banning flavors and that whole thing that went around too. So I think it's still a good goal. I just don't know in the near future if it's something that we're going to be able to jump on right away.
If I can jump in, when I look at these goals, instead of striking goals and that sort of thing, I mean, I don't mind having the goals on here and saying that we didn't get to it, and that then when we make our 2021 goals. We just moved some of these ones that were not accomplished onto the 2021 goals. We made progress on like goal number 1 there, in terms of joining the Leominster. I think that's fine. I don't think we have to, curtail what the goal was just to meet what we accomplished. I think that sometimes you have a goal and you say what you accomplished and it's only a portion of what you wanted.
Okay. So we'll keep that on there, and I may just tweak the language saying that we joined Leominster and that we will continue to look for internal, I guess, internal ways to, also do compliance checks and enforce regulations, something like that. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Number 2, we did have a very short period. I think it was in January and maybe February. We had 2 vaccine clinics here at the Board of Health before COVID. So we big thanks to the school nurses on being able to organize that. And I would anticipate at some point in the future, we will start again. I don't know if it'll be the near future, but that short-term goal should probably, I think, be moved to long-term at this point. We have the capacity, we have the infrastructure. We're just kind of waiting until things are safe.
And so are you discounting the flu clinic that we just ran? I mean, that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not discounting that. This was more of I guess when I talk about vaccines, I kind of put flu off to the side because we've always done that. This was for other vaccines, such childhood vaccines that we established. So,
yeah. So towards Nathan's point, though, I think as you move this from short-term to long-term, and the long-term goal is to optimize the immunization against infectious diseases in the town, and then that will comprise both the children and the flu. Or is flu vaccine only for children at this point?
Well, the way we do it is, yeah. So,
right.
I can get into that if you want, but generally,
no, you don't have to. But the point is, again, it's looking at immunizations broadly, and that's the role there, not just necessarily the the typical preschool, before school immunizations.
Okay.
And in terms of the freezer that we have, is that a -80 or a -20? I know with the coronavirus talk with the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, there's some stuff around. What would Westborough be able to handle, do you think?
We have a -20. Ours pretty much holds a -26 constantly. So we're okay for I think it's Moderna. Is that the one? Yeah. And the state did send out, maybe about a month and a half ago, a survey to us, asking what capacity we had. That our freezer is kind of like it's like a dorm style size freezer, unlike our refrigerator, which is a big refrigerator. So, capacity isn't as good as if it was a refrigerated vaccine, but we still have a decent capacity in there. We could probably do a couple thousand. I don't know. I haven't. So. That's where we're at as far as storage capacity. Moving on. So the next thing was continued partnership with Massdep for recycling grants. Just to point out, our mattress recycling incentive grant, that was kind of stopped during COVID just because of safety issues. But we still are doing the small scale initiative grant. So I think that's one that we just keep down. And whenever there are any grants that Massdep offers, I always do try to get everything we can get. And moving on, the next one is participate in the mercury recovery program with Wheelabrator. So we do recycle fluorescent bulbs, button cell batteries. Those right now we're being told at the end of the year we will no longer be collecting those because the mercury has been taken out of those. So that's a big plus for as far as getting that out of the waste stream. But that's something that we will continue to do on a long-standing basis. And then increasing public education on how to properly recycle, better signage at the transfer station, recycling flyers, that sort of thing. That's something we're currently working on, I think, with the Waste Management Committee. They are working on templates for signage that we just have to get to and get made. And they certainly are involved with recycling, obviously the compost program, the food waste composting program, those sorts of things. And I only anticipate other things happening, in the near future with that group. So I think maybe that's one we keep too. So moving on to long-term goals, obviously improve and maintain quality of food safety in restaurants. Or to do this, probably we'll have to look at the feasibility of develop a plan to implement a restaurant grading system. I think that's one that, that's certainly not going to happen in the next year or so. I don't know if that's one you want to think about, leave on, or think about, moving.
Yeah, so my feeling is, given what COVID is doing to restaurants right now and how much the structure of restaurants has changed in response to the pandemic, this doesn't seem to me to be a high priority. And the reality is there's only so much time the Board of Health has, and it's being sucked up by COVID-related activities, either contact tracing or responding to complaints in a way that I don't think would allow, at least through, these goals are for the end, through the end of June, and I expect COVID to be with us at least till April or May, even with a vaccine. So I'm not sure that there's going to be the time for this. If you keep it as a long-term goal, not something we worked on this year, okay, but I don't see anything happening with it this year unless somebody else feels differently.
Dr. Ehrlich,
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Kind of following what Dr. Wolf said, I think he had made the comment that, hey, we didn't get to this because, COVID happened or something, but it's still something that so I think that this is something that, Ray and Aaron invested a lot of time in. Grant, and I agree with what you're saying. Trust me, I agree. I'm just saying that we should, I'm just, concerned that if we drop it off, it'll just float off into the ether. So I'm just saying that it can go down lower on the list and just say that the board intends to look at this at some future point. Would that be a reasonable compromise?
Yeah, we could even say something along the lines of, further progress is expected in 2021.
Yeah, something
Sure.
like that. Would that be acceptable to the board?
Yeah.
I like it.
And just as a quick update to that, we are still doing our internal grading system, so that's still continuing.
So that's great, right? You guys are still working on this, right? So that I'm still
trying to get out to many restaurants.
We'll say Erin's
Okay.
working on it. I haven't been doing restaurants, so that's all her right now.
Okay. Well, if there's something, Aaron, some month that you want to present to us, you can. But if you want to just postpone it all till 2021, I'm fine with that too.
Okay. Moving on. The next one is just about inspection of each food service and tanning facility minimum 2 times per year. It also includes responding to housing nuisance and food service complaints within 24 hours of receipt. I think we're doing okay with that. Obviously, it's a goal we need to keep. Depending upon the COVID workload, things can get pushed back just a little bit, but we're trying the best we can to keep up with, the food, and housing has kind of slowed down, actually. We haven't had the complaints we usually get. I don't know, that could change at any time. Nuisance complaints and obviously COVID complaints are sky high. So I think that's one we keep.
Do we need a COVID goal on here? It sucks up so much time that it seems silly not to have that be one of our goals.
Yeah, I think so.
I have a suggestion for that, but I'll wait.
Yeah, let's finish what Steve has, and then we'll come to suggestions.
Okay. So the next one was increased general public awareness regarding the roles of the activities of the Board of Health, conducting presentations before school and community groups, sending Board of Health news and announcements through Facebook, recreation police, in addition to alerts through the town webpage and posting, increased access to inspection reports. So, I think we have done some of that with the weekly COVID reports. That's obviously helped, as far as, I know people look at that. If we don't have it up by 9 or 10 o'clock, I get emails. So I think that's one thing that I think that definitely we've been doing. As far as alerts and things, I have been using the fire department's Facebook page, police, library, rec. They're kind of the highest hitters, posting, the flu clinic, things like that. So I think we've done some of that, obviously, as far as giving presentations, things like that. Besides what we've been doing online here, and especially when we were going weekly with the selectmen, I think that did a lot too. So I think we've achieved some of this just through different measures than we originally thought.
Yeah, I would say there's no doubt that the public awareness has the public is much more aware of the Board of Health this year than they were a year ago.
People recognize me sometimes.
So in a roundabout way, I think we've achieved that one. And then the last one was explore regulatory options to increase residential recycling and decrease residential trash disposal. And there was something in here about, when we were talking about doing the private hauler regs, but I think this is an ongoing thing through the Waste Management Committee. We certainly have, I think, a good start to that committee. I know, as you said, Dr. Walsh, they were down at the transfer station this weekend doing compost. Yeah. So we're working with them. I think the group is, we're just getting started, and I think there's a lot of room for growth and achievement there. So I do think that in the next year or so, we'll certainly see other developments there. So I think that's a good one to keep. So I think at this point, we certainly do need some kind of COVID goal. I don't know how to broadly put it broad enough just to kind of cover
some suggestions, didn't
you?
Syed, were you going to make a suggestion?
Yeah, can I go ahead?
Please.
All right. So here, my concern with first, I want to acknowledge the work that our team has done, and in kind of having to rejigger themselves in the middle of this pandemic. But one of the concerns that I have with these goals is that if you look, and this goes back to what Dr. Walsh was saying, that one of the things that we have done this year truly is that we have, for a long time we've been, one of the things that we've talked about is that we've been a kind of an enforcement agency, but one of the things that we started looking at more and more is our responsibilities as public health. And so one of the things that I want us to kind of look towards, and I don't know if it's worth, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, but I just wanted to have a conversation with our staff and with you about how do we want to look at the public health aspect of our function. I talked about this a year ago, building closer relationships with their DPH, which we kind of have. And along those lines, one of the things that I had reached out to Steve about is, if we want to expand our role in the public health arena of our town, one of the ways that we can do this is along those lines, there were two studies that I was just going to suggest. One, we look at, for instance, kind of going off like the Framingham Heart Study, we do kind of a longitudinal study of physical activity in our town. Like, for instance, we find out what's going on with people's health right now, how much, ask them how much they were exercising before, how much they're exercising now. And then the other thing is we now have data on our residents that have had COVID, whether they were asymptomatic, not symptomatic, or they were symptomatic. Would be interesting to see longitudinally what happens with these patients. What were the effects of this infection? And it would be helpful to gather this data, so I bring these things up to say, how much of this, because, I think this pandemic has expanded our repertoire of public health. And I think that we should be examining how we can continue on this path.
I'm happy to comment if somebody else wants to. Feel free.
So I'm still trying to, wrap my head around going from kind of a goal of handling COVID to then this future goal now of kind of this in-depth long-term health study of Westborough residents. I kind of see them as two separate issues, but if we want to take the one that Syed just proposed, which is, a longitudinal study, I think we definitely need someone that is going to be the champion of that, that's really interested, that would, be the one that, for the next 10 years is kind of following up on, those people. We would need kind of health information privacy around all of that data we're collecting, in a way that we might not be doing right now with data that we have in-house. And so there's some logistics there. I'm not saying the logistics can't be done, but I think it would require kind of a champion within our group that is going to be the one that is, pushing it and seeing it to its end.
So, I think the ideas that you put forward, Syed, in many ways, they speak to things I'm very passionate about. but when I listen to you, I also recognize that these things do require resource. They require some of the things that Nathan had said. So, the idea of exploring over the next year how we might do this, I think that's certainly reasonable. We don't have to meet every goal. If things come up and we can't, I honestly believe the only way we could do what you're suggesting, Sayed, is if we partner with the School of Public Health or something similar where we're going to be able to combine our access to data with someone else's resources and support. So I'm not sure it needs to be listed as a goal. I think, if you want it to be, I wouldn't oppose it.
No, and to be quite honest, that I think is something that I need to work on, flesh out a little bit more. I just wanted to get a sense from you, and you're right. We do need a partnership. We do need, and if I can find that, because you're right, it's not fair to dump this on Steve and our staff. They're busy enough as it is. So we would need to have somebody helping us with this. So if the board is at least gives me the thing of looking for a partner, then I'll do that. I can circle back. But I do think we do need to look at how much do we want to get involved in and this goes back to what Dr. Walsh was saying about COVID-related goals. How do we want to look at the public health of our town?
Yeah. So again, I'm supportive of that in theory, and I'm happy to help you in some way I can that doesn't violate meeting rules and things like that. But yeah, this is to reframe what you're saying. Said this is a form of sort of outreach of understanding what needs are perhaps in the town in some way, and the only way I feel we can do that effectively if we were going to go in that direction at some point, because I know, and Steve, you can comment on this if you want, that consultant said, well, we should have a public health nurse or something like that. And ultimately, if we're gonna have a public health nurse, if the town's gonna pony up the money to hire that position at some point in the future, this kind of information would be ideal to help guide what types of initiatives the town would take. But that's a bit of a ways off, and we got a bunch of more immediate pressing things. So I think the idea of just some exploratory conversations to see are there partners who would be interested. And honestly, one of the partners, while we're at it, could be the Worcester Department of Health. They're a big city; they got a lot more money than we do, and this might be something where they might have some interest in doing this type of thing. But so those are my thoughts. Again, whether we put it as a formal goal or not, I can go either way. I do think we will need a goal for COVID, as you had said, Nathan, and I'm happy to focus on that as soon as we wrap up this particular item.
So So I'm with you on this, Dr. Ehrlich. That's
Okay.
fine. Let's work on a COVID goal, and then we can at the end of the conversation get back to long-term health goals. But that's fine.
I think as far as the COVID goal, what we wanted to address is, certainly contact tracing, that we want to be able to make sure that we've reached out and talked to every single person that has had a positive test. And if it's not us, it's our agent through the contact tracing collaborative. And that we've given them all of the information that they need, and that then we've identified all of their close contacts, and that then we've communicated with all of their close contacts. I think that as the first part of a COVID goal, needs to be in there and should be our goal throughout this whole thing. And if it ever ends up that we can't meet that goal, then I think that we need to come before the board and explain, what else the board needs to do to make it so that we can do that, whether it's additional funding, additional staff, or other resources.
So I agree with you, but for the purpose of the goal, I'm not sure we need to list out all of those things, and I would be fine with something to the effect of comprehensive contact tracing as part of the COVID goal. So that's one point, is to make sure we are doing that. Responding to concerns, I don't like calling complaints, I like calling concerns about social distancing and mask wearing.
do we want to limit it to that? I mean, even like hand washing or other, I mean, there's all sorts of different behaviors associated with the spread of disease that we would like to encourage or
Yeah,
respond.
So there's a difference between encouraging and responding to. So I'm
Right.
not going to respond to somebody saying, I was in the men's room and this guy next to me, he didn't wash his hands long enough. Okay. Like that's not going to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
But still, so
Like,
encouraging,
sanitizer at like a, an event that is required to have it because of COVID, those sorts of complaints we would respond to.
yes.
So I just wanted to make it more broad than social distancing and mask wearing.
Okay.
Do we want, so again, I know we touch these patients once, these residents once when we do the contact tracing. Steve, do we
No.
follow up?
Uh,
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, at least twice, maybe more. So basically, depending on a positive case, we'll contact right away, do an interview, and then explain to them what what they need to do. At the end of 10 days, we will call them again to make sure that their symptoms have resided, that sort of thing. And if they haven't by then, we may reach out again. So it can be multiple times. It's not just once. Certainly not once.
So at least there's twice that we've reached out to them, to most of the residents, right? Am I good? Would that be okay?
Many times, much more than that.
Okay. And just are those contacts recorded? I mean, do you have a document that you called X on like June 20th? So that is.
Oh yeah.
Maven, correct? Like just the fact that you made a contact, you don't actually have a recording of it or anything.
Not a recording, but just like a memo, maybe or whatever,
So,
a spreadsheet.
Is there a formal contact tracing form with particular lines that are being filled out?
Correct. So every time at least this is what it's supposed to be, every time we call them, even if it's like we left a voicemail message, we put that down, right? A called at this time, left voicemail message. So there's in each contact and or case, there is, depending upon who's doing it, Ray, myself, or even Erin's going to be on very shortly. There is a whole notes section, which is a running dialogue of what we've had with them. Never mind the regular fill in the blank stuff that we have to do.
Any other questions about that so far?
No, thank you.
I think I'm about to get a visual rendition of something here.
I don't think you'll see it. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. In any event, so the point is the COVID goals involve the contact tracing, the encouragement of safe behaviors. Are there other COVID goals that we need to put forward?
I would say that it's reaching out with the other departments in town, especially the school department, but to work with the other departments in town to make sure that we provide whatever guidance is appropriate.
Yeah, and that's a great one, Nathan, because we are constantly on the phone with the school department. Typically, just because our luck has been, it's on the weekend a lot of times. But for whatever reason, we, Judy Noonan and her staff, they've been terrific as far as we're on with them constantly. So that has worked very well, as Amber had kind of alluded to earlier.
Yeah, it seems like it's a very positive relationship. So we want to make sure that is our goal, to foster that relationship.
Okay. Anything besides COVID for other goals to suggest? Sad's already mentioned one. Okay. Go ahead, Nathan.
I think that's enough. No, I think
I agree. So.
Do we want to put in there that we will something aspirational, that we will continue to work to reduce transmission, or is that kind of I'm just.
Well, the only thing I would add to what we have is to continue vigilance with respect to nursing homes in town.
Okay,
clearly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Can we do that? Yes.
We have oversight over them, but I guess we could, try to just keep touch with them.
Yeah, that's another group I'm in touch with quite frequently. I have two very good contacts at the two major ones here in town. So
Yep.
another good relationship.
Okay. All right. I think then that wraps up the discussion on the goals.
So do we have to approve these goals, or are these just so that we could review them, or what was the point? Do we need a vote on anything?
Well, so the town does ask for these to be included in our budget. So I'm going to write, kind of amend some of them and then write the new ones in. If you want to just kind of, I don't know, I guess if you want to just vote to approve.
I think that if you do a good job of writing these up, I'm okay with that. I don't know, Alan, do you?
Yeah. I feel the same. Yeah, we've discussed it, and that's that. Okay. Back to the agenda. I believe we are up to director's issues.
Okay, great. So one thing that Amber had alluded to, we had our flu clinic last Thursday for kids. We did 80 vaccinations, so a little bit less than last year, actually. I was kind of surprised. I don't know if people are just going out and have already done it on their own, or whatever the reason. But we used a sign up genius for the first time to kind of space out when people could come in, so we wouldn't have crowds. So people were allotted times based on 15-minute increments to come in. I don't think we ever really had many people waiting. We had the nurses were ready. They got people right through. So I think overall, logistically, it worked out very well. And we probably could have done the same amount of people in 2 hours and spaced them out. Then we did. We increased by an hour. We usually go 2 hours, did 3 hours just so I could space people out. We did not want people obviously standing in queue lines, waiting to get the shot. So I thought overall it was good. The other thing about this, we got a grant actually this year that will probably pay for reimbursement grant that will pay for most of the cost. So that's another good thing. So just to let you know.
Good.
And we expect that schools are requiring in January that all the kids have flu shots, right? Is that still what the latest DESE guidance is?
I believe so. Yeah. So
I haven't heard anything otherwise either.
So we actually had one of the school, Judy Noonan, one of the school nurses there, so we were able to get that list right to her. So they're kind of seamless, so they have that data on who we vaccinated. So there shouldn't be any problem with those kids.
Okay. I mean, we could, just let them know that if we still have doses and it turns out that in December there's lots of kids that still need it. I mean, I don't know if we could do another flu clinic or not, but it sounds like we probably don't have the demand or the interest. But
we could probably work something out if there was, obviously the school nurses can give it. We could organize something through them to do that if there was a demand for that. So I don't know if I would organize a big, 3-hour clinic like we did, but there's other models that we could probably do if the demand was there.
Well, if we let just the nurses know that we still have, I assume we haven't had to return them to the state?
No, we still have plenty.
Okay, so yeah, we should just let the nurses know that.
Okay. So next issue. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Thanksgiving and recommendations. And I did put in your packet. The state has tips for a safe and healthy Thanksgiving. And I was unaware of this, but I think Erin told me that. Did we already post? Did the town post this on the Facebook page already, Erin?
Yeah, they posted it last week, I believe.
So this information has already been sent out to the general public, at least those that are on Facebook and stuff. I didn't know. I think maybe Syed, you had a concern about Thanksgiving and what we were going to be telling people.
Yeah, Dr. Ehrlich and Dr. Walsh, I was just wondering if we want, people travel, right? And so I didn't know if we wanted to, as a Board of Health, issue guidance on, this is a big holiday, and I didn't know if we wanted to issue guidance. And Steve had sent out what the state had sent out, and I didn't know if we just stick to that or we wanted to just simplify matters, because people are asking me, hey, should I go to Connecticut or can I go to New York or whatever? And so I thought I'd ask.
My tentative feeling is that, giving guidance is, easy as long as we agree. And if we don't agree, then we probably shouldn't give out guidance. I mean, I personally am not, going to go to a big Thanksgiving dinner. If I do get together with anybody, it would probably be, less than 6 people and, a very small affair. And I think that sort of general recommendation is, good. I mean, I think the state has consistently said, to try to keep individual groups at, no more than 6 people. And, to me, that doesn't sound like the way I traditionally do Thanksgiving, but it's what I'm going to be doing this year.
For this year, I believe the guidance from the governor is up to 10 people at your Thanksgiving dinner. And personally, I think the state has issued guidance on this, and I would defer to them. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if either you feel strongly that something else is in order, but when you start talking about traveling to other states, every other state has their own requirements, and if you go to certain states, they're going to want you to quarantine, or they don't want you to come, and there are fines being imposed and stuff like this. So, I think I'm not sure I want to say anything different than or give any different guidance than what's already out there, which is fairly strong.
Okay. I just thought. Thank you, Steve, for reminding me. Thank you for discussing this.
Okay, and then another one that you were asking me about was COVID and childhood obesity. Did you want to talk about that a little bit?
You know what? Scrap that.
Okay.
That. Again, Steve. Thank you. I think I need to, as Dr. Ehrlich and Walsh have pointed out, I think we need to find partners before we go any further. So let me find somebody that could work with us, and then I can circle back with the board.
Okay, and then the only last thing, and this is kind of just a selfish thing on my part, but we generally issue our COVID report every Friday, and most of my compilation of data happens on Thursday. So obviously, next week is Thanksgiving is Thursday, and we're off Friday. I could still do the report. I guess, what are your expectations, or what do we want to do around that time period in issuing the report? And then also, Dr. Ehrlich, I know you comment on many of the reports, so I just kind of wanted to ask what you think we should be doing.
And so the options in front of us is that either pull it earlier, push it later, or cancel it altogether, or have it on that day anyway. I mean, those are the kind of options.
That covers the spectrum there, Nathan. I thank you for that. Honestly, I think the most realistic options are do it on Wednesday instead of Thursday, or skip a week and just do 2 weeks the following week.
I'm with giving Steve a break. I'm with that. Give the poor man a break and just let's do it. Would that be okay?
Oh, wait, there's a third option. There's another option you hadn't come up with, Nathan. I say this based on watching facial expressions. We can have Ray do it instead.
I won't move for that.
We could pull the numbers on Wednesday. I mean, although we close at noon on Wednesday, but I totally expect to be working, with cases throughout, so it's really up to you. I just want to make sure we're on the same page as far as what you're going to do.
If we did it at some point, rather than skipping a week, it is better. I think that people will be asking for it. They already email when it doesn't come out. And so I think that pushing it later is going to generate a lot of emails and that sort of thing. Having it done a couple days early and just being like, yeah, this is what we had before Thanksgiving, and that the next one's going to come out, I think is a little bit, people can, deal with that a little bit better. I think skipping a week, especially right around Thanksgiving, it like you miss a little bit of baseline as to, what might be happening. So I would argue that we do it, but if we need to pull it earlier to coincide with people taking time off, that's fine.
Sure. So I can pull it on Wednesday, if you want, do it kind of mid to late morning, pull the numbers and get it out there. And, if that's acceptable, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. All right.
And I'll be available, Steve, if there's any issue.
Thank you. Other than that, other than setting the date for the December meeting, my director's issues are done.
Does anybody have any other issues they wish to or need to bring up at this moment?
No.
All right, let's look at our calendars for December.
I think the standard date would be December 15th.
Yes.
And that works for me.
I believe that works for me too. Let me just double check that I'm not scheduled to see patients, which occasionally I've screwed up. Okay, December 15th works for me as well. Said?
Yeah, just work with whatever. I'll work
Okay.
around you guys.
Okay,
Okay.
I make a motion that we have a meeting on December 15th.
Second. Any all in favor? Dr. Walsh,
Walsh, yes.
Dr. Hashmi,
Yes.
and Dr. Ehrlich, yes. Okay.
And that we adjourn.
I'll second that too. No further discussion. Dr. Hashmi, I'll let you go first.
Yes.
Dr. Walsh
Walsh, yes.
and Dr. Ehrlich, yes. Okay, thank you all for your time and attention this evening. Said it sounds like you still got a bit of an evening to get through before you're done.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.